The air within the solemn courtroom bore the peculiar scent of aged furniture wax mingling with a subtle, almost medicinal hint of formaldehyde, an austere reminder of the gravity held within these walls. A grand oak clock, steadfastly affixed to the front wall, marked the passage of time with a persistent, deliberate tick-tock, its slow rhythm seeming to stretch the hours as the destinies of souls were weighed on an invisible scale. Yet, this was merely a superficial calm, much like the deceptive quietude preceding a moral tempest. Amidst the unwavering solidity of the wooden benches and the silent dignity of those assembled, a figure stood out in stark, almost jarring contrast: Serena, the influencer. She was present not by genuine conviction, but by the cold mandate of obligation, her slender frame enveloped in a designer pantsuit that shrieked of exorbitant cost and calculated indifference. Her eyes, accustomed to the artificial glare of phone screens and studio lights, swept across the austere surroundings with ill-concealed boredom. Her lips curved into an ephemeral, practiced smile, ready for any eventuality, any camera. Her very posture exuded a dismissive arrogance, as if the entire proceeding was an inconvenient interruption to her meticulously curated digital life. She mentally catalogued the room's unflattering lighting, already composing a mental caption for a future post lamenting her unfortunate circumstances, framed by an expensive handbag. Beside her, almost forgotten in his own profound stillness, sat Mr. Elias, the victim. His worn, threadbare coat, carrying the faint scent of rain and damp earth, spoke volumes of a life lived on the fringes, devoid of the luxuries Serena so brazenly flaunted. His eyes, laden with silent dignity and a deep-seated melancholy, fixed upon a distant point beyond the courtroom walls, as if the present moment were merely another arid landscape in his long, arduous journey. There were no rehearsed smiles etched upon his face, only the raw, unvarnished truth of his existence. He clutched the brim of his cap in gnarled hands, the rough fabric a familiar comfort against the cool sweat of anxiety. From his elevated bench, Judge Frank Caprio observed them both, his expression a meticulous study in serenity. His eyes, crinkled by years of experience and a penetrating gaze into the depths of human nature, absorbed every minute detail, every nuanced flicker of emotion in the silent drama unfolding before him. In the hushed arena of a courtroom, where the echo of morality often resonated louder than any gavel, an influencer, intoxicated by the cruel digital glare of the spotlights, was about to confront the most brutal reflection of herself. She had sought fleeting fame, but what she was poised to discover was Judge Frank Caprio, an unflinching mirror that through a disturbing recording would shatter her armor of likes and views, revealing the fragile core of inhumanity beneath the curated smile. The scene dissolved from the austere calm of the courtroom, its polished wood and hushed air, to the cold, boisterous arteries of the metropolis, months prior. The autumn air, thick with the acrid scent of exhaust fumes and the sweet sour tang of neglected refuse festering in alleyways, pressed down on the city. A persistent fine drizzle clung to the skin, and the wet asphalt, a shimmering obsidian mirror, caught the dull glow of streetlights in fractured reflections. Serena, cloaked in a leather jacket that was more a defiant fashion statement than practical armor against the chill, adjusted her phone camera with practiced ease. Her eyes, alight with the glint of imminent content, darted about, already calculating engagement metrics, projected views, and the promised stream of monetization. Beside her, a compact crew of three, all young and equally tethered to their screens, awaited her signal, their own devices poised to capture supplementary angles. They had discovered Mr. Elias in his customary alcove, a hunched silhouette beneath a threadbare blanket, his deeply wrinkled hands cradling an empty plastic cup. His few possessions, a battered backpack, a volume of yellowed pages, and a battery-powered radio, lay beside him, silent witnesses to a life stripped bare. From his elevated bench, Judge Frank Caprio observed them both, his expression a meticulous study in serenity. His eyes, crinkled by years of experience and a penetrating gaze into the depths of human nature, absorbed every minute detail, every nuanced flicker of emotion in the silent drama unfolding before him. In the hushed arena of a courtroom, where the echo of morality often resonated louder than any gavel, an influencer, intoxicated by the cruel digital glare of the spotlights, was about to confront the most brutal reflection of herself. She had sought fleeting fame, but what she was poised to discover was Judge Frank Caprio, an unflinching mirror that, through a disturbing recording, would shatter her armor of likes and views, revealing the fragile core of inhumanity beneath the curated smile. The scene dissolved from the austere calm of the courtroom, its polished wood and hushed air, to the cold, boisterous arteries of the metropolis, months prior. The autumn air, thick with the acrid scent of exhaust fumes and the sweet-sour tang of neglected refuse festering in alleyways, pressed down on the city. A persistent, fine drizzle clung to the skin, and the wet asphalt, a shimmering obsidian mirror, caught the dull glow of streetlights in fractured reflections. Serena, cloaked in a leather jacket that was more a defiant fashion statement than practical armor against the chill, adjusted her phone camera with practiced ease. Her eyes, alight with the glint of imminent content, darted about, already calculating engagement metrics, projected views, and the promised stream of monetization. Beside her, a compact crew of 3, all young and equally tethered to their screens, awaited her signal, their own devices poised to capture supplementary angles. They had discovered Mr. Elias in his customary alcove, a hunched silhouette beneath a threadbare blanket, his deeply wrinkled hands cradling an empty plastic cup. His few possessions, a battered backpack, a volume of yellowed pages, and a battery-powered radio, lay beside him, silent witnesses to a life stripped bare. Serena approached, her smile a manufactured sweetness, her voice artificially bright. Yet a mischievous glint in her eyes betrayed the performance, a glint perfectly framed by the camera. "Hello, my friend. Need a little help today? I've got something special just for you." She extended a carefully wrapped sandwich and a crisp $10 bill. Mr. Elias, his gaze fixed on the damp pavement, murmured a soft thank you. But the special arrived in the ensuing moments. As his trembling fingers reached for the sandwich, Serena, in a rehearsed flick of the wrist, snatched the bread away at the last second, capturing his bewildered expression, the crumb of hope dissolving in his eyes. The prank, as she so casually termed it, was repeated with the $10 note, exchanged for a handful of rusted coins. And then, with a bottle of water she accidentally dropped, its contents soaking the man's only blanket. Her crew snickered, offering quiet encouragement. Mr. Elias offered no retort of anger, only a profound, aching resignation. Each fresh humiliation twisted an invisible wound deep within him, bleeding silently. Serena, meanwhile, thought, "This is going to go viral. That puppy dog look, pure gold for the views. People love drama, especially when it's not happening to them." She remained oblivious to the fading light in Mr. Elias's eyes, the warmth draining from his face, her focus unwavering from the cold glow of her screen, the promise of numerical validation. The mingled sense of urban rain and grimy pavement clashed starkly with Serena's cloying, synthetic perfume. a jarring olfactory contrast that underscored the vast moral chasm between their two worlds. Back within the hollowed, if somewhat sterile, confines of the courtroom, the commingled sense of aged paper and sterile disinfectant seemed to embrace the cool, polished marble, a stark contrast to the prior chapter's urban grit. Serena, now seated at the defendant's table, maintained an impeccable posture, her shoulders squared, chin slightly elevated, as if poised for a photo shoot rather than facing justice. In her mouth, a stick of mint gum was chewed with an irritating, defiant rhythm, a sound that, in the solemn silence of the room, echoed with the force of a challenging drum. Her eyes, previously bored, now flickered between a dismissive glance at Mr. Elias and a calculated gleam directed at Judge Frank Caprio, as if evaluating the optimal performance to deliver. In her mind, the situation was merely a temporary inconvenience, something the lawyer would handle, with a few $1,000s. I'm not a criminal, she thought, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on her lips. I'm a content creator. People just don't understand the art behind it. The minor fine was a trifle, easily covered by a single sponsored post. Her expensive leather backpack, carefully placed beside her, occasionally vibrated with notifications from the outside world, where she was celebrated. Judge Frank Caprio, a figure of serene authority atop his elevated bench, missed not a single movement. His expression was one of almost unsettling calm, his blue eyes seemingly absorbing Serena's arrogant energy without ripple or flicker. He noted the chewing gum, the disdainful glances, the ephemeral glint in the young woman's eyes. Internally, Judge Caprio reflected on the fragility of human dignity, and how the relentless pursuit of external validation could corrupt the soul. He felt the weight of the statutes, yes, but his heart beat with an older, more profound yearning for a justice that transcended mere paperwork, that touched the very core of character. She still doesn't understand, the judge mused, that this courtroom is not a stage for performance. It is a mirror, and she is about to truly see herself. The subtle click of a briefcase latch, the gentle scratch of a pen on paper, the almost inaudible sigh of Mr. Elias beside her, all contributed to the dense, charged atmosphere, anticipating a confrontation not of laws, but of souls. The silence, which had seemed heavy moments before, now fractured under the unwavering gaze of Judge Frank Caprio. He leaned slightly forward, his eyes, usually reflecting a myriad of emotions, now held a profound stillness, a calm that bordered on intensity. The air itself seemed to thin, making every breath in the courtroom a conscious effort. When his voice finally filled the space, it was grave and measured, stripped of any apparent judgment, yet imbued with an undeniable, silent authority. "Miss Serena," he began, his tone ignoring the soft, rhythmic mastication of gum that still persisted from the defendant, "we are not merely discussing infractions here. We are pondering something far more fundamental: dignity. What, to you, does human dignity truly mean?" Serena blanked, her carefully rehearsed, confident smile faltering for a fleeting instant. Her mind, usually a swift torrent of trending hashtags, engagement rates, and monetized content, suddenly felt like a stagnant pool. Dignity? She was accustomed to questions of influence, of likes, of reach. Her thoughts raced, scrambling for an answer that sounded both intelligent and, crucially, painted her as an innocent. "Well, Your Honor," she started, her voice a shade louder than was strictly necessary, a performative edge to it. "Dignity is having respect, isn't it? Being recognized for your work, for your influence. I work incredibly hard to create content, to entertain people. That, in my world, generates value." He wants to know about respect, she thought, a flicker of dismissiveness in her internal monologue. I am respected by millions. This old man doesn't understand anything about the modern world, the real world." Judge Caprio nodded slowly, his gaze never once straying from hers. "And the value of a human being, like Mr. Elias, resides in what, in your perspective? In how much he can produce? In how many likes he can generate for society?" The question sliced through the tense air like a cold blade. Serena gasped, the rhythmic chewing of her gum abruptly ceasing. "No, of course not, Your Honor," she retorted, a manufactured indignation flashing in her eyes. "Everyone has value, but, he isn't producing anything, not contributing to society in the same way I am. It's different." Her answer hung in the air, an unintentional confession of her entrenched materialism, a stark testament to her inability to perceive worth beyond the utilitarian or the digital. Mr. Elias, hunched slightly in his seat, felt each of Serena's words as a series of tiny needle pricks against his already wounded soul. He made no sound, offered no protest, only tightened his hands slightly, the weight of renewed humiliation pressing down upon him. Judge Caprio, meanwhile, felt the rigid embrace of the wooden seat beneath him, the faint metallic scent of a new pen being used by a diligent clerk, and the heavy, pregnant silence that settled after Serena's final, damning words. He knew the trap was set. Not a legal snare, but a moral one, meticulously crafted to expose the growing crack in the polished veneer of her arrogance, to force her to confront the vast chasm between her perception of herself and the profound reality of human compassion. Judge Frank Caprio cleared his throat, a sound that, in the court's dense silence, resonated with the finality of a trigger pull. "Miss Serena," his grave voice filled the hushed space, "the court has a crucial piece of evidence to present. It is not merely the video you disseminated, but the profound reality lying beneath its surface." A technician approached, and the large screen on the wall, previously inert, flickered to life. The room dimmed imperceptibly, and the raw, unfiltered images of Serena's prank unfurled. Her laughter, once so innocuous across social media feeds, now echoed with a chilling cruelty. Her forced smile for the camera a grotesque grimace of inhumanity. Serena watched herself, her face paling by degrees. She observed Mr. Elias's humiliation with an almost scientific detachment, still convinced he was merely an unwitting actor in her grand performance. But then the image on the screen froze. A stark close-up on Mr. Elias's wrinkled face captured the precise moment the water bottle drenched his meager blanket. And it was there that Judge Caprio spoke again, his voice soft, yet imbued with an overwhelming, undeniable truth. "Miss Serena, do you recognize this man? Beyond the superficial label of a homeless person, do you recognize the soul beneath the suffering?" Serena rolled her eyes, poised to deliver an impatient retort, when Judge Caprio added, "Perhaps you don't recognize him by name, but perhaps you'll recognize him by his story. Mr. Elias was the janitor at your elementary school, St. Clara's. He was the one who comforted you when you fell on the playground, who wiped away your tears when you lost a game. He was Mr. Moustache, the man who always had a kind word and a sweet treat in his pocket for the children." The air in the courtroom seemed to solidify. Serena felt the impact of Judge Caprio's words like a physical blow. Her eyes widened, a dawning horror stealing over her features. Mr. Moustache? That name, the memory of a gentle man, of a warm smile behind a generous mustache, of a comforting shoulder for a small child, flooded her mind. She looked at Mr. Elias now, really looked at him. That wrinkled face, yes, the lines of expression, the weary eyes, the familiar glimmer of the past. Her breath hitched in her throat. Her armor, once unyielding, cracked audibly, echoing in the cavern of her mind. Color drained from her face, replaced by a sickening pallor. The supercilious smile she'd worn collapsed, giving way to an expression of raw horror and disbelief. The forgotten chewing gum, a small pink blob, slipped from her slack jaw and hit the polished floor with a tiny yet explosively loud plink in the deathly silence. Tears sprang forth, not of sorrow, but of an agonizing shame, a belated, brutal recognition of the monstrosity of her actions. Her ego, meticulously fed by millions of fleeting likes, began to shatter, revealing the fragile humanity she had so utterly forsaken. Serena's collapse was immediate, a visceral implosion. The soft thud of her discarded chewing gum hitting the polished floorboards of the courtroom echoed in her mind like a final, devastating gavel strike against her meticulously crafted castle of vanity. Her eyes, once trained to catch her own reflection in any available screen, now found Mr. Elias, not with the practiced sneer of disdain, but with a terrifying, raw clarity. Uncontrolled tears, unbidden by any camera, carved salty paths down her cheeks, a river of pure panic and shame. With each gasping breath, the image of Mr. Mustache, the kind janitor from her childhood, superimposed itself over the figure of the homeless man she had so cruelly mocked. It was as if time had suddenly reversed, stripping away the layers of indifference to expose the trampled innocence beneath. The insistent buzz of her smartphone, vibrating within her designer bag, became an unbearable cacophony. Her trembling fingers fumbled for it. Messages and urgent calls exploded across the screen, her agent, then her sponsors, all pulling their support. Contract rescinded. Irreparable brand damage, immediate sponsorship loss. Each word was a freshly sharpened dagger, severing another limb from her carefully constructed identity. The digital empire that had once elevated her now turned with the fury of a hurricane. Comments on her latest posts, once adoring, morphed into a torrent of vitriol. Monster, inhuman, canceled. Her so-called friends, the fellow influencers who had sworn loyalty, sent hurried texts, rescheduling commitments, lamenting the situation, but truly scrambling away from her sinking ship. Her ego, which had felt an impenetrable fortress, buckled under the relentless assault. The digital spotlight she craved now incinerated her. What was left? Who was she without the likes, the contracts, the ceaseless validation? Inside her head, Serena's once confident voice was a terrified whisper. "It's over. Everything's over. I am nothing. How could I do this to Mr. Mustache? To him?" Panic iced her to the bone. The life she had curated, the image she had projected, disintegrated around her, leaving her stripped bare and vulnerable. She was exposed not just to the court's justice, but to the crushing weight of her own dawning conscience. The pervasive scent of wax and old paper in the courtroom felt like formaldehyde, a constant suffocating reminder of the death of her former self. Judge Frank Caprio watched Serena's collapse with a serenity that melded compassion and unyielding firmness. He waited for the last echoes of her despair to subside, for the final rattling breath of panic to quiet. When silence returned, heavier and more significant than before, his voice, now imbued with an almost paternal warmth yet undeniably authoritative, cut through the air. "Miss Serena," he began, his eyes fixed on hers, now swollen and red, "the law can impose fines and prison sentences. But true justice, restorative justice, seeks to heal, not merely to punish. It endeavors to rebuild what was broken, not just to condemn the destruction." He paused, allowing his words to settle. "You sought validation in an empty currency, likes and views. You mocked the dignity of a human being who once offered you selfless kindness. You failed to grasp the true cost of a soul, the invaluable worth of empathy and compassion. Your ego blinded you. Judge Caprio picked up an aged wooden gavel, not to strike, but held it in his hands as if it were a sacred object. Your sentence, Miss Serena, will not be one of incarceration behind bars. It will be an imprisonment within the reality you so cruelly avoided. For the next 6 months, you will live, truly live, in the world you so disdainfully ridiculed. The sentence was detailed, experiential. She would volunteer at a homeless shelter, serving meals, scrubbing bathrooms, listening to stories. Without a cell phone, without cameras, without recognition. She would spend entire nights there, feeling the cold, the insecurity, the quiet solidarity of the forgotten. More than that, she would be directly responsible for assisting Mr. Elias, should he accept her help, accompanying him, offering companionship and support on his journey to rebuild. You will learn to value the warmth of a bowl of soup, the comfort of a dry blanket, the dignity in every glance, the story behind each weary face, Judge Caprio continued, his voice swelling with passion. I do not condemn you to prison, but to the rediscovery of your own humanity. May your redemption be your true influence. The judge's words were more than a sentence. They were a philosophical discourse, an invitation to transformation. Serena listened, her heart thumping erratically. Tears still flowed, but now something different gleamed in her eyes. A mix of terror and, for the first time, a glimmer of comprehension. The destruction of her ego had opened a vacuum, and Judge Caprio's words began to fill it, not with fear, but with the promise of a new, painful yet profoundly meaningful existence. The scent of wax and old paper now felt less oppressive, as if the air in the courtroom had purified itself with the possibility of a new beginning. 6 months transformed Serena. The influencer vanished. Coconut soap and shelter clangs replaced perfume and screen glow. Her bruised ego resisted manual labor, invisibility, yet daily her shell cracked. She washed, listened, truly saw people. Mr. Elias, with quiet dignity, accepted her help. Guilt melted into profound respect as they navigated doctors. Her phone forgotten, real help was her new content. One cold morning, helping Mr. Elias, Serena choked, "I'm so sorry." His silent nod offered forgiveness. Judge Frank Caprio's wisdom had forged a redeemed soul from a shattered ego.